بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولي الصالحين وأصلي وأسلم على خاتم الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم الذي بعث رحمة للعالمين محمد بن عبد الله الذي بعث رحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين لهم بالإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So welcome everyone. This is our inshallah first session for Qur'an Ummah. It was the idea I had in the months approaching Ramadan, where I wanted to just share some fawa'id and benefits from books related to the believer's relationship with Qur'an and Quranic sciences. So inshallah today I just thought it would be a motivational session where we learn the benefits of being the friend of the Qur'an. Allah knows best. I can't speak for others or read their mind, but just from people's behavior, alhamdulillah, Muslims have a lot of reverence and respect for the Qur'an, but when it comes to actually engaging with it and having a more familiarity and a relationship that is essentially a friendship, this is something that inshallah through this program wanted to facilitate and by Allah's help make it possible. So anyhow, the first benefit Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Qur'an itself in Surah Al-Fatir or Surah Al-Fatir, that the one who recites the Qur'an consistently will earn a reward that will never perish. Even in this world, as we reflect before reading the ayah, a person may invest and gain a lot of wealth, but that wealth is going to end one day. As Ali radiallahu anhu, he was asked that how is knowledge better than wealth? A lot of people know the benefits of wealth, but when you look at knowledge, he said that how is it possible you say that knowledge is better than wealth? So he said that when you distribute wealth, it decreases. Like say you have $1,000, no matter what group of people you pick, then their number, that wealth is going to decrease when you separate it amongst those people. And he said that when you spread knowledge, like it's only one ayah or one hadith, and you tell 100, 1,000, it's going to increase because all those people are now going to engage and act upon that knowledge by Allah's help. So anyway, with the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَنفَقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ سِرًّا وَعَلَانِيَةً يرجون تجارة لن تبور ليوفيهم أجورهم ويزيدهم من فضله إنه غفور شكور. Allah says to the nearest translation, indeed those who recite the book of Allah and establish the salah and spend from what we have provided them in private and in public, they hope to earn a profit or a reward that will never perish. Allah will increase them from His bounty, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will fully recompense the reward and increase them from His bounty. Indeed, He is the all-forgiving, most thankful. As for the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which is the bulk of today's session, the first one is that when we recite the Qur'an in either in the masajid, as this narration stipulates, or in other places in groups, then those people who attend that group, they are given 4 benefits. The Prophet ﷺ said, as in the hadith reported by Imam Muslim, مجتمع قوم في بيت من بيوت الله يتلون كتاب الله ويتدارسونه إلا غشيتهم الرحمة ونزلت عليهم السكينة وذكرهم وحفتهم الملائكة وذكرهم الله في من عنده. No group of people gather to recite the book of Allah and study it. So this is the benefit of being the friend of Qur'an. We're always studying, reading the Qur'an. There is never a time in life where someone has completed or conquered the knowledge of the Qur'an that we learn all our lives. So anyway, when a group assemble or gather for this purpose, then the first is that the tranquility, إِلَّا نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّكِينَةُ. Sakina, tranquility, descends upon them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He described Sakina as هو الذي أنزل السكينة في قلوب المؤمنين ليزدادوا إيمانا مع إيمانهم. That Allah is the one who sends Sakina, tranquility, in the hearts of the believers, so that it increases them faith upon their faith. So through this, it increases our faith and it gives us tranquility. Number 2 is the rahmah, the mercy of Allah enshrouds that group. Number 3 is the angels engulf them. And the last one is Allah mentions the members of that group by name to His angels. SubhanAllah, what is greater than that? It's that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is proud of the action that the believers do. The next benefit is that those friends of the Qur'an who are skilled at its recitation and memorization, that they are in the company of angels who are noble and righteous scribes. But the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha that الماهر بالقرآن مع سفرة الكرام البررة والذي يقرأ القرآن ويتتعتع فيه وهو عليه شاق له أجران. That the skilled memorizer and reciter of the Qur'an is in the company of angels who are noble and righteous. That we see this theme is common. When the believer is with the Qur'an, then the angels want to accompany them. And although I don't know the opinion of other ulama, but the great muhaddith Ibn Salah rahimahullah, he held the opinion that the angels are incapable of reading the Qur'an voluntarily. That there were malaika like Jibreel, and on certain occasions, certain surahs, when they would reveal, other malaika participated in the revelation or the descending of that surah to the Prophet ﷺ on this earth. But the angels have a great love and respect for the Qur'an, and that's why they want to be with the believers who read the Qur'an. So the Prophet said the skilled reciter of the Qur'an is with the angels, noble and righteous. And the one who reads the Qur'an and he stutters when he recites it, and it is difficult for him is double the reward. And scholars say 1 is the reward for the attempt, and 2 is the reward for the difficulty, for their perseverance. Another benefit of reading the Qur'an is that certain surahs, just one surah, it can protect the person from the punishment of the grave. So there are many narrations here, but it just shows that the commitment of the Qur'an to help this believer who used to recite this surah of it on a consistent basis during their life before their death. The hadith of Abu Dawood and Tirmidhi is mentioned that Suratun fil Qur'ani 30 آية شفعت لرجل حتى غفر له. there is a surah in the Quran, it's just 30 verses, but it will continue to intercede for the Muslim until he is forgiven. And then the Prophet explained later, وَهِيَ تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ الْمُلْكُ. This surah is Surah Al-Mulk. The next narration will see even more how this is manifested, as mentioned in the Mustadrak of Imam al-Hakim, narrated by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, where the Prophet ﷺ said, يُؤْتَى الرَّجُلُ قَبْرَهُ فتؤتى رجلاه فتقول رجلاه ليس لكم على ما قبلي سبيل. So anyway, the narration says that a man will be put in his grave, and then something will appear to come from its feet, come towards its feet, and this later will be clarified that it is the punishment of the grave, that angels would attempt to punish this believer. So its feet will tell them that you have no way to reach me. كان يقوم يقرأ بي سورة الملك. So then the voice will come and it will say that this person that you're trying to attack and punish from its feet used to read me Surah Al-Mulk. And then the same will appear for coming from the next attempt will try to come to the believer from his chest. ثم يؤتى من قبل صدره أو قال بطنه فيقول ليس لكم على ما قبل سبيل كان يقرأ بي سورة الملك. So then they will try to come from its chest or its stomach, and the voice will repeat and say, you have no way to reach me from this side. He used to read Surah Al-Mulk. Then he will come, ثم يؤتى رأسه, he will try and come from his head. فيقول ليس لكم على ما قبلي سبيل. The voice will say, you have no way to reach me from here, this side of the head of this believer. كان يقرأ بي سورة الملك. That he used to read Surah Al-Mulk, he used to read me consistently. قال فهي المانعة تمنع من عذابك. Then the Prophet ﷺ described this surah and said, it is al-mani'ah, the one who protects or prevents from the punishment of the grave. And the narration says, وَهُوَ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ سُورَةُ الْمُلْكِ. This was prophesied in the Torah and described as Surah Al-Mulk. مَنْ قَرَأَهَا فِي لَيْلَةٍ فَقَدْ أَكْثَرَ وَأَطْيَبَ. Whoever reads this surah in a night has done a lot of good in quantity and quality. And then Imam al-Mubarakfuri rahimahullah, the commentator of Sunnah Tirmidhi, he describes why is Surah Al-Mulk named al-Mani'ah by the Prophet ﷺ, that it prevents from the punishment of the grave. He says, أي تمنع من عذاب القبر. It prevents from the punishment of the grave. أو من المعاصي التي توجب عذاب القبر. Or it prevents from the sins that make a person deserving of the punishment of the grave, or sins that necessitate the punishment of the grave. هي المنجية. It is the savior, or the one that gives a person salvation. يحتمل أن تكون مؤكدة لقوله هي المانعة وأن تكون مفسرة ومن ثمة عقب بقوله تنجيه من عذاب القبر. He says another name for it is because that it saves the person from the punishment of the grave. Now the next narration, it has weakness in its chain, but it's just to help us envision what was already said about the Qur'an accompanying the believer in the life of the grave. So one is that when the believer is questioned for the questions of the grave, in the hadith of Al-Bara ibn Azib, which is mentioned in Musnad Ahmad and other books, that he will say, فيقول when the believer is questioned, من ربك فيقول ربي الله فيقول صدقت وبأين دريت هذه. Close meaning that the believer, when he says my Lord is Allah, it will be told that you spoke the truth, but where did you attain this knowledge from? Or بما عرفت, how did you know this? He will say قرأت كتاب الله. He will say, I read the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Qur'an helps us answer the questions of the grave. But after those questions are answered, there is a narration. It's mentioned by scholars that are less known in hadith, like Al-Uqayli, Ibn Abi Dunya, Ibn al-Jawzi even put it in al-Mawdu'at, but as those who study hadith know, Imam Ibn al-Jawzi, he is very hasty to call a hadith call a hadith fabricated if he was not familiar with it. If he was not familiar with it, he would just call it not abrogated, fabricated. So anyway, the portion of it is lengthy, but it will say that وَجَاءَهُ مُنْكَرٌ وَنَكِيرٌ حَتَّى جَاءَ يَكُونُ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَهُمَا فَيَقُولَانِ لَهُ. So in the part when the believer is approached by the angels Munkar and Nakir, some of the ulama say these are just descriptions, they are not their real names. Allah knows best. But they will come to him until and they will tell him فَيَقُولَانِ لَهُ إليك عنا حتى نسأل فيقول كلا ورب الكعبة لا أفارقه حتى أدخله الجنة فينظر. So the Munkar and Nakir will tell someone who is guarding this believer in the grave to move away so that they may question him. So this voice will reply, and the hadith will explain that it is the Qur'an that this believer was so dedicated to. The Qur'an will say that, nay, I swear by the Lord of the Kaaba, or I swear by Allah, I will not leave this believer until I enter him into Jannah. فَيَنْظُرُ الْقُرْآنُ إِلَى صَاحِبِهِ فَيَقُولُ لَهُ. So the Qur'an will tell his friend, his companion, uskun wa abshir, that be restful and calm and rejoice. فإنك ستجدني من الجيران جار صدق ومن الأصحاب صاحب صدق ومن الأخلاء خليل صدق. The Quran will tell his friend, he will say, you will find me from the neighbors as a good neighbor, and from the companions as a good companion, and from the intimate friends a good intimate friend. So then after that, قال فيقول من أنت. So the believer will ask the Quran after that, and he will say, who are you? And the Quran will respond, أنا القرآن الذي كنت تجهرني وتخفى بي وتسر بي وتعلم بي. The Quran will tell the person in the grave that I am the Quran, the one that sometimes used to read me out loud, كنت تجهر بي وتخفى بي, sometimes used to read me silently, وتسر بي, sometimes you read me privately, وتعلم بي, sometimes you used to read me in public. وكنت تحبني وأنا أحبك, and you used to love me and I love you. وكنت تحبني وأنا أحبك اليوم, you used to love me in the worldly life and I love you today. ومن أحببته أحبه الله, and whoever I love, Allah loves. ليس عليك بعد مسألة منكر ونكير من غم ولا هم ولا هول. The Quran will tell the believer, after the questioning of Munkar and Nakir, you will have no worry, you will have no grief, you will have no sorrow, you have no fear. فإذا سألاه منكر ونكير وصعدا عنه. So when Munkar and Nakir question him after they have questioned him and then they ascend, بقي هو والقرآن في القبر, that this man in the grave and the Qur'an will remain together. فيقول القرآن لا أفرشنك فراشا لينا. He will say that now I will be the means for you, O believer. After the believer asks the questions correctly, Allah says صدق عبدي فألبسه من الجنة وأفرشه من الجنة وأفتح له بابا إلى الجنة. Allah will reward the believer for answering the questions correctly and say, my slave spoke the truth, so give him clothing from heaven and a bed from heaven, and open for him a window into the garden of his garden in Jannah. So anyhow, the Qur'an will say, I will now give you a good or soft bed, وَمَهْدًا وَثِيرًا, and وَدِثَارًا دَفِينًا حَسَنًا جَمِيلًا. So you will ask for him a good bed and a comfortable resting place until his time to be resurrected. جزاء لك بما أسهرت ليلك. This is a reward because through your reading of me in the worldly life, I used to keep you awake at night, the Qur'an says. وَمَنَعْتُكَ شَهْوَتَكَ, and I kept you away from fulfilling your desires. وَعَيْنَيْكَ وَأُذُنَيْكَ وَسَمْعَكَ وَبَصَرَكَ, fulfilling desires by either looking with the eye or listening with the ear. And then it will be said, قال فلينظر إلى السماء أسرع من الطرف فيسأل له فراشا دثيرا فيعطيه له. So anyway, this believer, after the Quran tells him that, he will look towards the sky from his grave and he will see that Allah had given him what the Quran has. So anyway, I'm repeating, this is not authentic. It has weakness, but it's just to help encourage us to see that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, perhaps something better He has prepared for those in the Quran, who are dedicated to the Quran. Next is the Quran honors its friends by intercession on the Day of Judgment. In the Hadith of Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, تعلموا القرآن فإنه يأتي يوم القيامة شافعا لأصحابه وفي رواية شفيعا لأصحابه. The Prophet said in this narration, learn the Quran, and another one, اقرأ القرآن, recite the Quran, because it will come as an intercessor for its friend on the Day of Judgment. وعليكم بالزهروان البقرة وآل عمران, and for you is the two shining ones, the two shining surahs, which are Surah Al-Baqarah and Al Imran. The Prophet said, فإنهما تأتيان يوم القيامة كأنهما غمامتان. These two surahs will come in the form and a manifestation as if they are two large clouds, and they will shade the believer. Or part of the narration says they are like the birds or the wings of birds that hover above it. كأنهما غايتان أو فرقان من طير تحاجان عن أصحابهما. These two surahs, Surah Al-Baqarah and Al Imran, they will defend on behalf of their companions. And then the Prophet mentioned more virtue of Surah Al-Baqarah, وَعَلَيْكُمْ بِسُورَةِ الْبَقَرَةِ فَإِنَّ أَخْذَهَا بَرَكَةٌ وَتَرْكَهَا حَسْرَةٌ وَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُهَا الْبَطَلَةُ. The Surah Al-Baqarah, the Prophet said that reading it and living by it and benefiting, engaging from it, it is blessing, and leaving it is regret. And none of the sahir, the magicians or soothsayers, can affect the person who reads it. And to reflect, this is a story of our time. I met, a person of knowledge from Palestine, and particularly the part of Nablus in the West Bank, and he told me that there was a story where a person of another faith wanted to bewitch and read sihr on a righteous Muslim, young Muslim woman. So she would have the habit of reading Surah Al-Baqarah every day. And then even when she did not have, tahara, if she was in the state of hayd and menstruation, as we know, the rules regarding not reading Qur'an in that time, she would still listen to Surah Al-Baqarah every day. So somebody wanted to bewitch her, and they went to the sahir and told them, this is what I want this, sihr to fall on, and this is their information and belongings and whatnot. So the sahir, they said he was like a very experienced, skillful magician, but he could not figure out why the sihr would not fall on this woman. So later, the person who bewitched them, he asked around her, and they found that she had this habit. She used to read Surah Al-Baqarah every day when she was not menstruating, and when she was menstruating, she used to listen to it. Next is that the friends of the Qur'an advocate for the special crowning and gown commencement ceremony of their friend. The Qur'an advocates for his friends the special crowning and gown ceremony on the Day of Judgment. It's mentioned in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad and the Sunnah of Imam al-Tirmidhi that يَجِيءُ صَاحِبُ الْقُرْآنِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, the companion of the Qur'an will come on the Day of Judgment. فيقول القرآن يا ربي حله. That the Quran will say, oh my Lord, give this believer a gown or a robe. فيلبس تاج الكرامة. Or excuse me, so the Quran will ask, oh my Lord, adorn him, give adornment to this believer. So this believer will be given the crown of honor. And then the Quran will say, Ya Rabbi zidhu. The Quran will say, oh my Lord, increase him. So فَيُلْبَسُ حُلَّةُ الْكَرَامِ. This believer will be given the gown, like when we graduate, we wear like a special robe or gown. This believer will be something far better than that. He'll be given the robe or the garment of honor. ثُمَّ يَقُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِرْضَى عَنْهُ. Then the Quran will pray, oh Allah, be pleased with this person. Be pleased with him. فَيَرْضَى عَنْهُ. Then Allah will be pleased with this person. فَيَقُولُ لَهُ اقْرَأْ وَارْقِي وَيُزَادُ بِكُلِّ آيَةٍ حَسَنَةٍ. Then this believer, after he has been given the robe and the crown and the pleasure of Allah, he will be told, read and ascend, and you will be increased with every verse a good deed. SubhanAllah. And this is showing that he did all those good deeds in this world, where they got much more reward for that. But imagine Allah is adding hasanat to him after he left the grave, and now he is in alimul akhirah, he's in the afterlife. The next benefit is that the Quran will grant its friends the eternal life in the right hand and their kingdom of Jannah in the left. The hadith of Buraydah radiallahu anhu, he said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ saying, as reported in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, the Sunnah of Ibn Majah, that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ الْقُرْآنَ يَلْقَى صَاحِبَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ حِينَ يَنْشَقُّ عَنْهُ قَبْرُهُ. That the Quran will meet its companion on the Day of Judgment once his grave has been split. كَالرَّجُلِ الشَّاحِبِ, like a man whose skin color has changed. And we'll explain in the end what is one interpretation by Imam al-Suyuti why the skin color of the figure that the Quran will, or the shape of the Quran will take. فَيَقُولُ لَهُ هَلْ تَعْرِفُنِي. The Quran will tell this man who just got out the grave, he will say, do you recognize me? فَيَقُولُ مَا أَعْرِفُكَ. The Quran will say, I do not recognize you. فَيَقُولُ لَهُ أَنَا صَاحِبُكَ الْقُرْآنِ الَّذِي أَظْمَأْتُكَ فِي الْهَوَاجِرِ وَأَسْهَرْتُ لَيْلًا. Then this man who is in a pale skin or a different frail shape will tell this person that I am your companion, the Quran, that used to keep you thirsty in the hot days, and I used to keep you awake at night. وإن كل تاجر من وراء تجارته وإنك اليوم من وراء كل تجارة. It says that every business person will get the benefit and the profit that they worked for. And today you will be awarded the best of business, the best of profit. فيعطى الملك بيمين, that he will be given so the mulk will be given to his right. The kingdom will be in his right hand. والخلد بشمال, and he will get the eternity in his left hand. ويوضع على رأسه تاج الوقار, and what will be placed on his head will be the crown of dignity and nobility. ويكسى والداه حلتين لا يقوم لهما أهل الدنيا, and this man's two parents will be clothed with two garments that not all the people of the world in the history of humanity will be able to produce such two garments. فيقولان بما كسينا هذه, then the two parents will say that why have we been given these two garments? فيقال بأخذ ولدكم القرآن, so because your son or your child was a recipient of the Qur'an, that your child was a memorizer of the Qur'an, he lived by it, he acted by it, he understood it. ثم يقال له اقرأ واسعد في درجة الجنة, then that believer will be told that recite and ascend in the ranks of Jannah. وغرى فيها, in its stage, in its like rooms, apartments, palaces. فهو في سعود ما دام يقرأ هذا كان أو ترتيلا. This believer will continue to ascend the ranks of Jannah. He will not cease to elevate and ascend, whether he reads slowly or in a fast pace. And then the last one is that the Qur'an will take the believer to the top of Jannah, as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in Tirmidhi and Abu Dawud, narrated by Abdullah ibn Amr, that قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقال لصاحب القرآن اقرأ وارتقي ورتل كما كنت ترتل في الدنيا فإن منزلك عند آخر آية تقرأها. That the Prophet ﷺ said that it will be told to the companion of the Qur'an that recite and ascend and read in tartil, in a melodious voice, that with tajweed and for following the rules of each letter and its rights and its derived rights, and also having a melodious voice. That this comes through practice, that not all of us will be able to read in a beautiful voice from day one, but it is something very meritorious in our religion. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. Allah gives His bounty to whoever He wills, but when it comes to reading a beautiful voice, the Prophet ﷺ said فَإِنَّ صوت الحسن يزيد القرآن حسنا, that the good voice, it increases the Qur'an in beauty. And also that the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that Allah doesn't listen to something more attentively than how He listens to a Nabi when he reads the Qur'an. So anyway, that believer, he will be told to recite and ascend and read it in a melodious voice, and that the last place you reach will be the last ayah you stop. So from this, Aisha radiallahu anha and other scholars of the later generations, they said that إن عدد درجات الجنان بعدد آية القرآن, that the number of the ranks in Jannah are equivalent in number to the level of number of ayat in the Qur'an. So this concludes today's session. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who hear the best of speech and follow it with the best of action, Inshallah, I will update this the schedule for future sessions. This inshallah Ramadan, try to do at least one session every day of Ramadan, and sometimes because there's different topics, I will try to alternate topics by day inshallah. So jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.